Hello, folks. This week I'd like to take a look at a little tune called Let Me Call You Sweetheart. Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Keep the love light burning in your heart so true. Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you. So this is a sweet little tune. It's actually a tune that my mother used to sing to me when I was little, so it's got a special place in my memories for that reason. You've got a few PDFs that I gave you, so the standard chords and lyrics page, where it's just got the lyrics with the chord names written above it, and it's got chord charts on there as well. And you've also got another PDF called Let Me Call You Sweetheart chart, and there's one chart with melody. You've got the chart to show you basically how we're going to strum this song and where the chords change. I used a lot of slash notation, which is where you see slashes in place of tablature that would normally be written. That's just to help keep things from looking too cluttered on the page. Once we've established this is how you play the G chord, I don't want to keep writing that in the tablature over and over and over again. So instead of writing that tab over and over again, I'm just using those slash marks. I tried to leave tabs here and there just to help guide you. You do have the chord diagrams at the top of the PDF, but especially some of those spots where we've got some bonus movement going on. We'll take a look at those spots as they show up. And then the PDF with the melody is there to help show you where the lyrics fall within the song. This song has been around for a while, so there are some different publications. The version in the Daily Ukulele book is pretty close to this one. I've made some tweaks. It's still in the key of G, uses a lot of the same chords and the same chord voicings, but I've tweaked things here and there, particularly in terms of the melody. In the spirit of oral tradition, as music and stories are passed down, they kind of play a little game of telephone. Again, that's something that you'll hear in the course of the song as we play through. Some of the jazzier interpretations of this tune kind of follow that sort of feel that I'm going for here, and I'll have examples for you in the email as well if you haven't already seen those. Let's start by just taking a look at the strumming pattern. I'm muting the strings, so we're just going to chunk here to get a feel for the rhythm and the strumming pattern that I'm using. So we are in 3/4 time. You can kind of think waltz for this song. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. When I'm playing this song, I'm kind of using this sort of pattern. Down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. Now I'm doing that pattern, and if I play it really straight, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. It feels very mechanical. It doesn't have that same feel. The way that I'm getting the particular feel out of that pattern when I'm strumming it is that I'm applying a bit of swing to the eighth notes. So down, up, down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down. You might also notice that I'm putting a little bit less emphasis on beat 2. So I'm down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So I'm still hitting that second beat, but I'm putting much less emphasis on it. So I'm kind of like working with that kind of lilting motion. Another way that you could approach this is a very waltzy feel, especially if you're playing someone else, someone who's covering some low notes, maybe a bass player, could be covering the one on all of these measures, where you could be emphasizing the 2 and the 3. So bump, 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 bump. Depending on how you're feeling, depending on how you want to jam with the song, you can try out a few of those different ways. You could also play it exactly as it appears on the page, where you're just strumming each beat. 1, 2, 3. Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you. And it's going to sound perfectly lovely when played like that. Usually when you see these kinds of charts, they're giving you a guideline. Usually they're going to be pretty simple rhythmically, unless someone is trying to tell you this is the rhythm that I want you to play. Something like this, it's just kind of filling up the measure with the number of beats that you're supposed to be playing, and you can kind of work in whatever rhythm that you would like to do. All right, let's start working our way through the song, and we'll kind of slow down when we hit some of those odd spots, some of those little flourishy parts. 1, 2, 3. Let me call you sweetheart. Here we go. This is a really cool move on the ukulele. So this is the measure number 4. I'm in. So we're transitioning from that G feel to a C. But as we're doing that, we've got these little chord shifts. The melody plays this C sharp and walks up to the next note in the melody. I'm in love with you. So we're kind of mirroring that with the chords here. So I'm playing G on the first beat, and then I'm playing this G diminished chord, which is actually a G diminished 7, and then to a G6. It's a really cool sound, very evocative of the way we think of ukulele and in terms of like Hawaiian music, that kind of sound that we get. So we're kind of like bending our G chord a little bit. And that takes us into our C chord there. I'm going to play those first 4 measures again, and we'll see how that all works. 1, 2, 3. Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love. Cool. So after the I'm in love, switching to that C. Again, my index finger and middle finger are being used for that G, and they stay down when I do the G diminished to the G6. And the reason there's a G6 in there, like it could have gone back to a regular G, but we're transitioning so quickly there. Why bother putting down another finger, right? Like that chord is there solely for convenience, so that we don't have to play something extra. Even though, yes, we're playing a new chord and it's another chord that gets added to the chart at the top, we are playing that to make things easier on ourselves, to make that transition a little bit easier. It just so happens that it also gives us a cool sound. All right, so now we're in the next row, measure 5. We're on that C chord. I'm in love with you. So I went from a C chord to an E7 to an A7. watching where your fingers go here can be really helpful in changing these chords, right? So going from the C to that E7, I can leave my ring finger on that A string and just slide it down to the 2nd fret, and then apply the rest of my fingers appropriately. So my first finger's on the 1st fret of the G, and my middle finger's on the 2nd fret of the C. Okay. For this next part, I might go different ways when it comes to playing this, but probably the easiest way to make this transition from the E7 to the A7 is to simply slide your middle finger from the 2nd fret of the C string to the 1st. And voila. Again, I transition from the C to the E7 by sliding a finger, and from the E7 to the A7 by sliding a finger. Right? Next we have a D/C. A D/C is, on ukulele, we can call it D/C, or we could just call it a D7. It's this voicing right here where I've got 2nd fret of the G, open C, 2nd fret of the E, and open A. All well and good, fantastic. So we have this version of D7, but in this song I am also using another way to play D7, like this. This is going to show up a little bit later in the tune. They're both D7s, but they have different sounds. So rather than try and come up with like D7A and D7B or some other distinction like that, which sometimes folks do make, I decided to just, let's call this D/C. Okay, so out of that A7, we're going into that D7 or D/C. Let me hear you whisper that you... Okay, so it's a lot of that D7, that D/C all the way across, but we have this F minor thrown in there. What's that even doing in there? That's the same idea as we saw before with that movement, that G diminished to G6. It's that same idea. Really, you don't even need to think about it as another chord. All we need to do is just think about that movement. I'm going from my D7, I'm moving my fingers down to the 1st fret, and then moving back to D7. So I'm just allowing that chord to follow what the melody does. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. So really all I'm doing is just allowing that movement to happen. Now here is that spot, that transition from A7 to D7 or D/C, that is going to make me question what finger I want to use to play that A7 chord, because I'm going to need to be ready to play the D7 in the next measure, right? So if I did this and I slid down here, there are two main ways that I want to play that D7. It's either like this or like this. And either way, if my middle finger is hanging out here, it's going to require a little bit of work. Either way. Neither one is going to be that far. It's not that big of a jump, but it is something to consider. So what I might do is switch fingers. I've got two measures of that A7 there. So when I'm going C, E7, A7, on that second measure of A7 there, where I'm not singing, I'm not doing anything else, I can replace my middle finger with my pointer finger. And then when my index finger is holding down that note, then I can use my middle and ring finger to play the D7. So I'm going to go back to measure 5 and play through that. I'm going to do the switch. I'm going to do the finger substitution for that A7, and then play measures 9 through 12. 1, 2, 3. So I'm just going to walk through those chord changes. C, slide down, E7, slide down to A7, do a little switcheroo, D7, get my little funky move, measure 13. We are back to our G shape. And then we have a G sharp diminished. 3, 2. So that's a tricky-ish chord, right? Got a lot of fingers going on there. So if you haven't played one of these diminished 7 chords before, I've got my index finger on the 1st fret of the G, middle finger on the 1st fret of the E, ring finger on the 2nd fret of the C, and pinky on the 2nd fret of the A. So it's like 1, 2, 1, 2. It can be pretty tricky to get all of your fingers down there at the same time, right? It can be something. And then we transition out of that into this other D7 chord. So there are some interesting sounding chords there, but the reality is they're not necessary. So if you're really struggling with those chords, you don't have to play them. Some substitutions that you might make are just staying on that G chord until you get to the D7. And that's going to work fine. As long as nobody else is playing the G sharp diminished, you're going to sound fine, just like that. Another option is you could play G, G7, D7. Love me too. And likewise, if switching to that particular D7 is a little tough, you could always use that other D7, the D/C. That is also going to sound great. Love me too. Those are all going to work just fine, but the color that G sharp diminished adds to it, and the particular voicing, the placement of our notes for this D7 sounds really nice up there. So if you like the way that sounds, and those chords are a little tricky for you, just keep practicing them. Just keep practicing that move, switching those fingers. There's a lot of jumping going on there. There isn't a lot in the way of shortcuts. You could do something like this. You could do that. These fingers are not really up for that movement for me. It's probably something that I should practice, because that would be really handy to be able to play this chord shape with these 2 fingers, with my ring finger and my pinky finger. I'm going to practice that. All right, so moving on to page 2, the chords that we're seeing here are the same chords that we saw toward the beginning of the song. 1, 2, 3. Keep the love light burning in your heart so true. That's it's all stuff that we've seen. The only difference here is we're playing an A chord instead of an A7. You could totally play that A7 like we did before, or you could change things up and play that A. All right, and then these last 8 measures, these last 2 lines, things change just a little bit. So in a lot of the music for this part, where I have the C6 written out, it is indicating a C chord to be played. I chose the C6 because we are singing an A note over that C. And if we add an A note to a C chord, we get a C6 chord. So I figure, why not? Let's go for it. It's all open strings. It's a nice place to use that C6. 1, 2, 3. Let me call you sweetheart. Okay, so we've got C6, D7, G. Then in that 4th measure, we have an E7, E augmented, which is E7 augmented. Back to E7 again. So really all I'm doing is playing an E7, and then I'm putting my pinky finger down on the 3rd fret of the A string, and then releasing it to go back to our regular E7. Now the reason I'm throwing that in there is because that's what the melody does. I'm in love. I'm in love. So I'm mirroring that melody within the chord. Again, when the chords for this are written out in most of the arrangements of this song, you're just playing an E7 throughout that whole measure, which will work just fine. I like adding those melody notes, especially when they differ from the chord voicing. I love adding them into the chord voicing because it helps my ear identify the note that I'm supposed to be singing, and it's not clashing as much with the chord. So that's going to lead us to our last 3 chords, our A7, D7, or D7 or D/C, and then we end on our G. Like so. I'm going to play those last 8 measures so we can hear what that all sounds like together. 1, 2, 3. Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you. I'm going to play through the song one more time. This is actually just the chorus to the song, but this is the part of the song that has kind of lived on. 1, 2, 3. Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Keep the love light burning in your heart so true. Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you. I hope you enjoyed playing that little tune. Send me an email if you have any questions at tinyvillagemusic@gmail.com. Or if you want to suggest a lesson, you can drop me a line there as well. I hope you are all safe and healthy. Keep on strumming, and I will talk to you all next week. Take care.